everyone. Welcome to the Community Church Online Experience. We are so excited that you're here with us today. Hey, if this is your first time, do us a favor and comment where you're watching from. Look, our heart is to be real with everyone, live differently in our community, and offer the hope of the gospel. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Community Church Online Experience. We're so excited that you're here with us today, listening, watching. We're so grateful for you. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have with us just a man of a ton of wisdom, somebody I've looked up to for a majority of my life. He's been a spiritual father to me, and liked him so much I wanted to be a part of his family, so I asked him to marry his daughter. And so here with us today, I'm so excited to have my father-in-law, Pastor Armand Prentiss. Man, I'm just when we talked about this message, even years ago, I was like, this is a game changer. This is something that's going to be helpful to people in a way that's super practical. And the first time I heard the message, it was revolutionary to me because I hadn't heard a lot of the concepts, but you've honed it the last couple of years. And for our church to be able to have this type of resource, to be able to know how to handle the things that we're going to talk about today, man, it's a game changer. So I'm really, really glad you're here talking about this. I know we're gonna have such a good time whenever we hear it on Sunday. And so today is Sunday for most of you that are listening. But if you hear it at a later time, man, it's just going to be so rich and so good. So Mr. P, we're talking, this particular week is not a part of like any series that we're doing. This is just kind of we call it a standalone, right? And I'm glad you're having the opportunity to talk about this because a lot of people deal with dysfunctional families. A lot of people are dealing with, and they probably wouldn't even categorize it as that. They don't even know, right? So like a lot of people, especially here in South Louisiana, the family unit is the main thing that people hold their identities in, and sometimes that can sometimes not be super healthy. Right. But when we identify the dysfunction that happens, we realize a lot of the things that we're dealing with, a lot of the emotional stress that we're dealing with, is actually coming from the family unit. So the question I would have kind of leading you into this is how do we deal with that? And I know you're going to talk about that at a number of levels, but kind of from the start, what is the purpose of our families? Like, how are we supposed to approach our relationships with our families?
Well, first of all, we want to be givers. We want to help our people. We want to be a resource for them. We want our church to be a resource for our people. Yeah. We want to be a resource within our families.
Right.
The people come to church looking for biblical answers to what they're going through.
Right.
And a lot of times there's topics and issues that don't get addressed.
Right.
This is one that I have never heard extensive preaching on in 50 years. I've never heard people preach on this, and yet the majority of the people sitting in the room are going through it.
Right.
So as Christian believers in our homes, in our families, we want to walk it in a way that Christ would want us to walk it in.
Right.
So that would be.
Yeah, that's so good. So and I think the goal for our families is to create a place of peace, right?
Exactly.
I think our homes have to be a place of peace. When the Holy Spirit is close to us, that the benefit of it is peace. And a lot of times, the people that we're in relationship with aren't contributing to that. And so how do we, when we have family members who are a little bit difficult, or there's dysfunction, or there's something like that, how do we overcome that? How do we become overcomers whenever people are dysfunctional around us?
Well, Romans 12:18 says, as much as possible, be at peace with all men.
So good.
As much as possible.
One of my favorite scriptures.
It's not always possible.
Yes, right.
That's right. The problem. And so, we are supposed to be at peace. And what the way I see it, we have a lot of very clear explanations from the Lord on how we are supposed to approach people in our home and outside of our home.
Right.
And we have some verses that I'll be covering in the sermon. Matthew 5:42-44. Give to anybody that asks and love your enemies.
Yeah.
But that's real clear.
Right.
Matthew 10, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Matthew 25, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick and those in prison. Those are all very practical things.
Yeah.
And we read those and realize, that's the goal. That's what it's supposed to look like. But I mean, how do I do it?
Right. So that's the next question is like how do we practice this out? How do we make that practical?
Well, the first thing is based on love. And it's not love if I'm being coerced.
Ooh, that's good.
And I want to real quickly mention two of my resources for this sermon were the Boundary series by Dr. Cloud and Townsend, and also John Bevere's book, Breaking Intimidation.
Right.
Those were two resources that I used.
Phenomenal books.
But, I wanted to know I read this, give to anybody that asks, and the rest of it, it's like, well, I want to do what the Lord wants me to do, but what does this look like in real life? I mean, how do I go about doing this? And what I discovered was that these are the goals, but then the same Bible that gave us these goals also gave us boundaries. It gave us limits, gave us restrictions.
Yeah. Yep.
And we're not making those up. We're finding them in the Scripture.
Right.
And so it gives us a boundary. The coercion thing, though, in Acts 5, Ananias and Sapphira sell property. They bring the money, but they keep half of it, and they give half and say that's the whole amount.
Right.
There was no need for them to do that.
Right.
Peter tells them, you could have kept all the money. You could have given half or all.
Right.
The problem is you're lying.
Right.
About what you did. And when I'm coerced into helping someone, there's no blessing in it for me.
Right. That's exactly right.
Because I'm giving into guilt or I'm giving into, blame or whatever. And so I miss out on the blessing because it was coerced, I was manipulated or whatever, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, into it, and I missed the blessing because it wasn't a heart of love.
Right. Right. So, and there's a lot of churches that will do that as well. There's a lot of churches that are going to manipulate, coerce people to try to give more, try to give this, try to give that. I just feel like that robs people of what the Bible says is if you're going to give cheerfully.
Yes.
Well, if I'm giving out of an emotional response to guilt or shame, that's not a cheerful giver.
Right.
And so not only is the church or the person asking for the money not getting the blessing that they're looking for, but it's also robbing the people of their blessing of giving cheerfully, like the Bible says.
Exactly. The Bible talks about us giving with a thankful heart.
Right.
Well, if I'm doing it out of, feeling like I'm being talked into it or shamed into it,
right?
And you and I both been around.
Yeah.
We've seen guilt trips put on the congregation.
Right.
We've seen, I don't know any way to say it, but appeals to greed.
Right.
Give so you'll get.
Right.
Give so you'll get.
Press down, shaken together.
Yeah, right. And but we want to get back to a biblical heart of gratitude.
Right.
And that gratitude and that heart to honor God shows itself in my giving. It shows itself in my serving other people.
Yep.
Giving of my resources to others as they have need and as I feel led.
100%.
And not feeling embarrassed or ashamed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's so good. So how do we? So we talked about what our role is in our relationships, but how do you So we talked about a little bit about dysfunctional people. How do you recognize if somebody's dysfunctional?
Right. So there are different groups, and we all know at least some of them.
Yeah.
But there's the ones that are, there's some that are have a dependency.
Yeah.
A chemical dependency or
right,
some
like an addiction.
Some kind of an addiction.
Yeah.
What happens is they go into survival mode. They're not thinking about the future. They're thinking about right now, today, tonight. That's all they're thinking about.
Right.
And when they're trying to get help, financial help usually, they'll try being nice. And if that doesn't work, they'll try guilt. And if that doesn't work, they'll try getting really angry.
Wow.
And they will go right through I'm old, so we would call it a Rolodex. But the idea is they're just going through the list. Okay, being nice didn't work. Let's try. And they don't really care which one works.
Right.
It's irrelevant to them.
Yeah.
Now, the person that they're hurting might be getting devastated.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. I'm going to keep going till I find one. I'm going to blame you. I'm going to guilt trip you. I'm going to sweet talk you. I'm going to try whatever I can to get you to give me what I need for today.
Right.
And they don't worry about whether they're burning bridges. They don't worry about emotions. It's just about survival. But there's others that are not that obvious.
But there are a lot of families probably listening, probably watching, that do have family members that struggle with addiction. And we know this because we've done a lot of study on it, is that addiction is a disease. There's a chemical mix-up that's happening that they almost can't even control it. Right. And so and I know you're probably gonna we're gonna get real practical later. I know there's a lot of practical things that we're gonna talk about. But what would you say to someone who is dealing with a family member that does have an addiction? How would you talk to them if you were in a counseling session or you're talking to somebody in the church? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, it comes down to this is actually the end of the sermon when I preach it, but
yeah.
I can answer that for every family. You say, well, how can you answer for every individual situation? Well, I can answer it by asking a question and let you answer it.
Yeah.
Are they getting better?
Right.
And if they're not getting better, you're enabling, which means you're just delaying the inevitable.
That's so good. Somebody needed to hear that today.
And if
somebody needed to hear that.
And if they're not getting better, if they are getting better, you're helping them. You need to keep doing whatever it is you're doing if you're seeing progress.
Yeah.
A real honest person will look at it and say, it's helping or it's not helping.
Yeah.
Enabling, I've seen, I know of a family where it was a single mom situation. The grandparents had money. And so they were giving the child money, giving them money. Child was living a very reckless life, got into drugs, was crashing cars.
Yeah.
The grandparents would give them another car.
Wow.
Just keep going. And their daughter, the mother of the child, said, You're killing my son.
Yeah.
You're killing him. You've got to stop.
It's true.
They didn't stop, and the child wound up dying.
God.
And, it just did not. And as a side note, that well-to-do family had nothing left financially.
Man.
They literally gave it all, wanting to love their grandchild.
Right.
You hear the heart.
Sure.
But it was destructive.
Yeah. So we'll get deeper into that in just a moment.
Okay.
But so what are some other dysfunctional behaviors that you've noticed, or how can we identify dysfunctional behaviors in the people that are in our families?
There's people that have anger issues.
Yep.
They go from 0 to 1,000 degrees.
I know people like that.
I do too. Fortunately, I don't know any in my family, but you say, well, we have to forgive them. We have to just, let it go and forgive them. But the Scripture says if you bail out an angry, in other words, if an angry person gets in trouble, it says hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them from it, they will just have to do it again.
Wow.
You will just have to do it
so
again.
Good.
So, the parents are always running, trying to protect their child from being punished or penalized for their actions. Until the heart issues change, you're just going to have to keep doing that.
Right.
And is that really helping the adult or the child? And generally anger issue people, if there's no audience, it ends a lot quicker.
That's true.
I've told more than one person, you need to tell them, look, you're blowing up. I'm going to leave. Call me when you're over it.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting paid to watch the show.
Yeah, that's true.
So just leave.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay for that. And usually it'll end quicker.
Right.
And so that's one thing. There's people that don't have any control in their life.
Yeah.
Not necessarily an addiction thing. They just don't have any control in any area.
Yeah.
And those people will always be having issues that, somebody's trying to come and help them get out of their the majority of car sales are impulse buyers.
Right.
Well, you impulse buy and then you have years of notes.
Right.
And then they're talking about how, we don't have money and, things are really tight.
Yeah.
Well, I had the guy that told me, come see the car the Lord blessed me with. And I said, okay, I went out there. And this was a long time ago. I mean, now the guy's note would have been just under $1,000 in today's money.
Wow.
6 years.
Yeah.
I said, why do you think God did that?
Right.
Why are you blaming God?
Yeah.
The devil would have given you that deal. I mean, he just, but it was an impulse buy.
Right.
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 So, that's another one. Of course, there's manipulators. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
People that will manipulate you, whatever they have to say. And they don't have to be addictive. It can just be, I just want what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want people to do what I want them to do.
Exactly right.
And
narcissistic type people.
And narcissistic type behavior.
Yeah.
And the ones that are the hardest for some believers to deal with are the drainers. Because they want all your time. They want all your time.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to have time for other people because they want your time.
Right.
And it's insatiable. You cannot give them enough that they say, good, I'm good now.
Correct.
And so what happens is the person trying to help them gets worn out.
Yeah.
Because only Christ can be with them all the time.
Right.
That's got to be the source.
Yeah.
And in the church, we have people that are mercy people. They just don't like to see people hurting and don't want to tell people no and don't want people to feel like they need them and they're not supplying that need. And those are the people that really, really get burned out.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm one of them. So like that, unfortunately, as a senior pastor, as the pastor of this church, I really have a deep heart to help meet people's needs. The problem that I find, so I'm listening to this message and I'm even getting convicted myself about just making sure that the time that I'm spending with people, that they're getting better. And if they're not getting better, then if they're not getting better, then I'm enabling them, right? So I had a pastor tell me in my life that a lot of people are going to want your time, and this is not just as a pastor. This is for anybody.
Yeah.
If people want your time and don't want your wisdom, then they don't get your time.
Yeah.
So like if people are coming to us to get advice or to help them through a situation, I love doing that. That's why I became a pastor. And I know you love doing that. It's why we jumped into ministry, because we love helping people. But if people are only wanting our time and they don't want our wisdom, which I'm not saying I have wisdom. I'm not saying that I have a whole lot of it.
Well,
but
you do.
But if they're wanting help and they're not getting better from it, then there's no point in spending more time. One of the things that you taught me early on in my ministry career, I guess you'd call it, is that when I meet with people for counseling, we give them one shot and we give them homework. Yep. And and when I say homework, like, hey, work on this, do this. Here's one thing you could do to make yourself better. So always leave them with something to help them be better. And we will not schedule time with them again until they got that done.
Right.
And I
learned that from someone else. But, I had a lady that came and she had a pretty serious situation, and I gave her some concrete things.
Yeah.
I told her this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Not because I had some spiritual revelation, just I've seen enough times. I know.
We've seen it enough.
Seen the movie.
Yeah.
So I told her what she needed to do, and 3 months later, I saw her come in down the hallway. I thought, well, here we go, because I knew she hadn't done what I told her.
Yeah.
And she went right past my office to the next pastor's office.
Wow.
And had the same conversation.
She wasn't looking for wisdom; she was looking for time.
And I went to the senior pastor afterward. I said, "Hey, tell me about what happened." Well, and I said, "What'd you tell?" Well, he told her the same thing I did.
Right.
And we hadn't even talked about it.
Yeah.
But there are people that want and these are real drainers. There are people that just want to tell you what they're going through. They don't want to answer. They don't want to fix it.
Right.
They just want to say it over and over and over to as many people as possible.
Right. And that's unhealthy.
It's unhealthy for everyone. It's unhealthy for them to recite it over and over, and it's unhealthy for the person that's willing to listen over and over and cry with them. We do want to be there. We want to have empathy. We want to care.
100%.
We want to help them walk through it, but walking implies going somewhere.
Right. That's so good.
And if we're not walking through anything if they're not getting better.
That's so good. So we've talked about a couple of things here. We've talked about how to identify dysfunctional people. We've talked about how to recognize when they're being dysfunctional. But now we need to know. Now here's where it all comes together. Now what do we do about it? How do we live this life with dysfunctional people in our lives? Right. How do we set those boundaries? What's the answer to it?
Well, it's easy to see the boundary if you think of it in a physical way. Like, you have a fence in your yard, and it's understood, this side of the fence is my property, that side's your property.
Right.
You can do what you want over there.
Right.
You're going to come in here, then, I'm going to have a say in it.
Yep.
The boundaries, a lot of them are in the scripture. It says we're told to feed the hungry. Now, if I just read that, I say, well, then I'm supposed to feed every hungry person. I mean, everywhere.
Right.
I mean, they have hungry people all over the world.
Right.
But for the person that's dysfunctional, we were given in 2 Thessalonians 3:10, if a person won't work, don't let them eat.
Wow, that's true. That's true.
Well, here's my goal that Christ gave us, feed the hungry, but because he knew that would enable.
Right.
Knew that would enable.
Right.
We're told to love everybody. Well, certainly that was an absolute. Well, It says if people are causing division among you, give them a first and second warning, and after that, don't have anything to do with them.
Oh, man.
That's Titus 3:10.
I like that a whole lot.
So here's my goal.
I'm tattooing that on my eyelids.
I want to love everybody. But if a person that I'm trying to love is constantly causing division.
Right.
And then you get into Matthew 18.
Right.
Where church discipline, we're supposed to do something about it.
Yeah.
The one that is absolute, and this is a hard issue, is that I'm supposed to forgive everyone.
Right.
But forgive doesn't mean placing myself in a position to get hurt over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
That's not the same thing.
We read in Freedom this last week that, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation.
No, it doesn't always. And
doesn't
let me just say this
that.
about that. It's a great point. And here's something for a lot of people that need to hear this. The person who put the wall up in a relationship is the only one that can take it down.
That's good. That is so good.
I may not want the wall there, but I can't take it down because I didn't put it there.
Right.
Now, if I put it there, I have a responsibility to take it down.
Absolutely.
I can pray that God will change their heart and that they will be motivated, but I can't pull down a wall I didn't put up.
Right. That's so good.
And so that...
So I had a conversation with somebody just this week, and one of the things that Grace and I have kind of put into place for the boundaries around our family is that if there's a family member that is going against the values that we've set in our home and set in our lives to protect our family, that it's not necessarily to cut people off. And I hope I free some people with what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But you don't have to cut people out completely, but you can put a pause on a relationship.
Sure.
Or limits. Yeah. So I'll give a practical example. If there's family members that don't fully agree with the beliefs that you have, like whether it's Christianity, whether it's certain stances within Christianity, but they choose to live a life or child rearing. If they choose to live a life outside of those boundaries, then until they're willing to, they don't have to believe what you believe, but they do have to honor what you believe.
Exactly.
And so if they can't even honor what you believe, then maybe there's a boundary that needs to go up where we're saying, look, I love you. Love does not mean proximity. Yeah. I don't have to be in proximity with you to love you. I can love you from a distance. But to be able to say the only way that we'll be in proximity again is if you honor these things, whether, and again, you don't have to believe them, but you just have to honor that I believe them, and I'm going to make sure that I'm protecting the peace that we talked about earlier, around my family, around my life.
Yes, absolutely.
And my role as a husband and a father is to also protect the peace of my family.
Yeah.
And if they feel so this might be a little bit controversial as well, but if you're a husband or a wife in a family where you're the spiritual leader, or a mom in the family, single mom, that's okay too. Single father,
absolutely.
Your job is to protect the peace of the people that are in your family.
Yes.
The extended family is not included in that.
No, they're not.
Our job is not to protect the peace of our extended family, our moms, our brothers, our uncles, our aunts. That's not our responsibility.
Right.
Our responsibility is our immediate family, and we have to put the boundary around them. So there are times where we can put a pause on a relationship and say, hey, we want to be in a relationship with you. Make every effort, like you said, to be at peace, within your power to be at peace. But just because we want to be at peace doesn't mean they want to.
Well, and a lot of times when you talk about boundaries, family members think they don't apply to them.
Exactly.
It's like you see the sign, keep out on a door, and they say, yeah, but that doesn't mean me.
Right.
They're not talking about me. And what comes from that is the stuff of TV shows and movies. The boundary, let a husband and wife come together and become one flesh. And that's an intimate, closed boundary. That's a couple. Well, what do you get when that's abused? You get everybody loves Raymond.
Right.
They're next door. They walk in anytime they feel like it. They criticize or condemn or critique everything going on in the home.
Right.
And it's chaos.
Right.
It's chaos.
It's absolute chaos.
And so those are the ones a lot of times that, well, that boundary doesn't apply to me. Well, in some level, it can.
Yeah.
And what you were saying, if I have family members that believe and live a different life than I do, I could still spend time with them, but I might not be comfortable with my children being there. Or I might not, want to be in a situation where there's no exit.
Right.
I've had relationships where I was going to meet somebody for lunch. And this, you want to talk about practical, this is practical. Going to meet somebody for lunch and knowing that they're very, very volatile.
Yeah.
And having the cash for the meal in my pocket so that if it got out of control, I could tell the waitress, this is for me and that's the tip. Thank you. And I can walk out.
Right. Very practical.
Because if it blows up in the restaurant, I don't want to have to wait for them to run my check and then get everything. I need to get out of there. Wow. And so that's just one example, but we want to make sure that we recognize the boundary here, and then there's a larger boundary with my immediate family, my children, and my church. Yeah. Even though you go to church together doesn't mean you have the exact same.
That's exactly right.
When everybody had kids when our kids were growing up, like everyone had kids, lots and lots of kids. But we communicated. Yeah. If we had a child staying the night with us and we were going to go somewhere, we called the parent to make sure they're okay with them going to see that movie. Or they're okay with them going there. Right. And if they said no, we didn't get mad. We just changed, to a different movie or something. Right. Communicating that way allowed everybody to have their own standard, and yet we could fellowship one to another. Right. We could get along. Right. And so, those are things, and in churches, there's got to be boundaries, between the families, where we're willing to meet, and it's okay if we disagree. Right. On some things. Yeah. We still love each other. We can still have our children be friends together. We just communicate. It's about communicating. It is about communicating. And so, and being able to communicate with family members and say, when the kids are over here, our standards still apply. Yeah. A lot of grandparents want to say when the kids come over, they can do anything they want. Right. I don't care about the rule of your house, my house, they can do whatever they want. Yeah. I'm not good with that. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And just making your boundaries clear is also very important. Yes. And you have to know what your boundaries are. Or you can't do it. Or you can't do it. Right. And I'll say this as my last statement for it is, boundaries are for the people who don't honor them. Exactly.
Usually they don't realize that they need the boundaries, or the other people don't need the or the other people think that they don't need the boundaries. But usually the boundaries are because of them, and they're going to do their best not to honor them because they don't think they apply.
Right. Some people see your fence and bring a bulldozer.
Yeah, that's right.
Instead of using the gate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Man, this is so good. And I'll say this as we end, Mr. P. You wouldn't say this. You wouldn't feel comfortable saying this about yourself, but I have the authority to be able to say this. Is the authority that you're speaking from right now is because, not only because you're a man of God, but also because you have 4 kids who are all serving the Lord. All of your kids are serving the Lord. All of your grandkids are serving the Lord. Therefore, you've done something right. Yeah. I know you probably wouldn't say, you probably wouldn't, you'd probably say, man, I probably did a lot of things wrong. But I can tell you, as a part of your family tree now, that the authority that you speak from comes from a place of complete honesty and complete authenticity. And that's why I'm honored to have you share what you shared with us today. And it comes from a place of complete authority because of your fruit. The fruit that you've shown in your life, the consistency, the character has all given you the authority to be able to say what you're saying today.
Thank you very much.
So, man, I'm just so grateful to have you here. I'm grateful you're a part of our lives, grateful you're a part of our church. Man, it's just, you know how I feel about you, but honor isn't honor until it's expressed, and I just want to honor you.
I appreciate it.
So, man, this has been a good conversation. This has been so practical, man. Good. This is the content here has been so beneficial. So, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's conversation, tap like and subscribe on your device and whatever streaming service you're listening on so you don't miss out on our upcoming content. One of our values here at the Community Church is to be fearless in our faith. So please share this episode with someone. If you want to know more about who we are and how to get connected into what God is doing at the Community Church, click on the link in the description of this episode. Finally, we'd love for you to come and join us and to be a part of our spiritual family for our Sunday morning services at 1000 Parkview Drive here in New Iberia. 8:15 a.m. is our serve team rally. At 8:30 a.m., we have pre-service prayer, and corporate worship begins at 9 a.m. and again at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.